Hey, what's up guys, aarava here, and welcome back to another episode of my F1 22 My Team Career Mode. This is episode number 91 today for the Austrian Grand Prix. If you guys did miss the previous one at Monaco, then be sure to go check that one out before you see this one. That was a pretty spicy one as Monaco races go, and on this game, seems like we can't not have carnage at the Monaco GP. It was myself versus the championship leader, Fernando Alonso, but that battle ended in absolute misery as Alonso took it upon himself to not give me any room going side by side through swimming pool. And, well, it didn't end well for us. It ended much worse for a lot more cars, actually, as there was a full-on pile-up at Monaco, and Alonso ended our race pretty much because we did try our best, give it our best effort to limp around the circuit, to try and carry on, as I wanted to give you guys some more racing action, but the car was so heavily damaged, side pod, floor, and diffuser damage, there was just no pace, and we were dropping down to last place, P12 as it was at that point in the race, and we just decided to save the engine, save the components, and just save our misery, really, as there was a long way to go. So, two back-to-back, no points finishes, one with the engine failure at Miami, one for that DNF after contact with one of our championship rivals early on in this season. So we need to bounce back in some style, and this is a double whammy, of course, at Austria. There's the sprint race and the full Grand Prix, so there's even more opportunity to gain points back on our competitors. So we're diving straight into the action then on Friday qualifying it is, to get us through in towards the top 10 shootout, I hope. There is some rain forecast for this weekend. The qualifying sessions should remain dry, but there is rain forecast for not only the sprint, but also the race. So, you know, it kind of gives me some memories, some very good memories, actually, of last season here at Austria, where we had a wet main Grand Prix, and we pulled off that insane race win, where we pit for the full wet tyres, remember, off the intermediates, and the dying laps came back through to overtake 5 cars, I think it was, in the last couple of laps and get the win on the last corner of the last lap. So, you know, we come to Austria with very happy memories, and generally speaking, the last couple of F1 games, I've gone very well around the Red Bull Ring. First part of qualifying, we just make it through. A bit surprised to be down in P15 after I set what I thought was quite a competitive lap, but the track evolution at the end meant that a lot of people put in a faster second lap, and because it's such a short circuit, you find with maxed out cars especially, we're all so close together, so there could be a few little shocks and disappointments as the grid will be separated by a matter of a couple of tenths alone, I think. It was a little bit overcast in these first runs in Q2, you can see, so I was a little bit worried maybe was there some surprise rain to come here on the Friday as well, but it's going to stay away and actually get a little bit sunnier at the end of this session. But the colder track temperatures maybe from the overcast conditions meant that, unlike Q1, a second consecutive lap for me on that set of tyres did not improve my lap time, and we just pit in from that second flyer, and on the third flying lap we only just about went a little bit quicker by a tenth and a half, but we needed that tenth and a half because that got us through into Q3, so we actually only just scraped by, and it's a huge development for us in here in Q2 to see both Aston Martins knocked out. They went from a 1-2 at Monaco, Fernando Alonso winning his first race of the season for Aston Martin, to him being knocked out in P13, but of course with this sprint race he could well recover for a pretty decent grid slot for the full Grand Prix on Sunday. But for Saturday's sprint, we have a chance now of maximising the points if we can get to the sharp end here in qualifying and then get it over the line on Saturday's sprint. So we've got some very quick Audis though, who look to have picked up a bit more pace around the Austrian Grand Prix. They haven't looked too hot in the last couple of races, but this circuit I think definitely suited Audi in previous seasons as well. But for us, bit of an unknown. I thought we looked quick in Q1, but that wasn't the case. But Verstappen was at the sharp end of the session. In Q2, both of us only just scraped through into the top 10 shootout, so don't really know what the pace is saying of this car, but this has been a very tidy lap for us. That does see us get up into provisional pole position ahead of the likes of Schumacher and Magnussen, though, in the Williams, now split by Sainz. And by the end of the session, because that was our one and only flyer, because that second run did not improve. We did a second run, didn't bother to show it to you because I wasn't improving on it. So that was our one and only run, and that ends up being good enough for pole position. So we've pulled it out of the bag at the last minute. In the session where it counted, we were the quickest. So really, everything else before it doesn't matter. We're on pole for Saturday's sprint race alongside Felipe Drugovich in our team, Aarava Archer Racing. Verstappen P5. The two Audis not as quick as I thought they would be in this session, and the Williams cars, after showing promise in the first runs, fell away a bit, and Leclerc and Bottas there in the kind of usual suspects, I guess, from last season, the Mercedes and Haas. So who knows how this will go with some rain also involved on Saturday. Let's go to the first race of two, the sprint.
It's wet here today, and we're expecting those downpours to continue. This will make for a difficult sprint for all the teams.
It is indeed a wet start here for this sprint on Saturday. Not full-on wet, intermediate, which, I don't know, either way you can kind of say it's a good or bad thing. I don't know, I think the performance of the Inters sometimes can tend towards the AI having an advantage rather than the full wet tyres, but because it's a sprint race, there won't be changeable conditions, so I think we'll be on Inters the entire time. So that's at least one good thing. We won't have to, you know, work with the crossover period where the AI very much do have an advantage in that kind of scenario. So for us, 12 laps ahead, trying to convert this P1 to P1 by the checkered flag to bag the maximum points, whilst the championship leader, the man who took us out last episode, Fernando Alonso, is outside the top 10 and will find it very hard to recover into some points, let alone get a good grid slot for Sunday's race. So this is a big opportunity today to bounce back in the championship early on as we go to 5 red lights for the sprint here around Austria, and it's a good start for us in these conditions. Actually, a fantastic start. Really wouldn't have guessed we would have had one like this on Inters, but into turn 1, completely unchallenged. 1.1 seconds the gap, 1.2 ahead of Leclerc and Drugovich, as everyone behind us gets caught up battling, and we're able to pull away somewhat, but gingerly into that right-hander as we end sector 1, just not wanting to lock up and make a mistake in these conditions. Is now Leclerc and Drugovich is still going at it, and a side-by-side. Leclerc just getting ahead of Felipe, I can see, for P2. So the Mercedes man has started off quick. Verstappen as well, who's up from where he started on the grid, up into P4 there, and it's a slow one for Valtteri Bottas as he goes down to P5, closely followed by Lando Norris, Sebastian Vettel, Mick Schumacher in the Williams. Hulkenberg and Sainz round out the top 10, and Fernando Alonso is still there in P13 where he qualified yesterday, and Russell has no front wing, I can see there, I think, so that's going to cause a bit of chaos. Alonso's right behind that, and the Williams will crash into the Mercedes. Russell entering the pits, and there's damage for the Williams. Alonso keeping his wits about him, didn't get involved, and now he's right up behind a very slow Williams with no front wing, and he's surely going to make an overtake into turn 1. It's nearly 3 wide ahead of him between his teammate Schumacher and Carlos Sainz, as now Leclerc ahead for P2. He's feeling the pressure from Drugovich. Will Verstappen get in the mixer as Drugovich tries to go round the outside of Leclerc? Verstappen spun it! Our teammates facing the wrong way now at the end of sector 1, and there's a big pile up here in Austria, and Fernando Alonso, the championship leader, is out of the sprint race. He definitely had his right tyre sheared off. There's a couple of other cars caught up in that. Verstappen recovering and spinning it round. Loads of cars on the run-off. A couple of people were damaged, and a couple of people fully out this Grand Prix, but it all started, I guess, as a butterfly moment from this, as it was Magnussen hitting Russell at the last corners as Russell came into the pits having broken his own front wing. He then broke Magnussen's front wing as he entered the pit lane. Alonso goes for a move ahead. Hulkenberg tries to overtake or go for an overtake on Schumacher and Sainz. And then way further ahead is this battle for P2 between Leclerc, Drugovich and Verstappen. And Verstappen is just going to get a bit too greedy on the curb and spin the car. Just downs the throttle way too early on the curb there. Unsettled it, obviously a wet curb. And then Alonso comes careering in to this caterpillar kind of concertina effect of a pile-up at the end of Sector 1, and there's Andretti involved, and Andretti car is out as well. I think Hulkenberg gets caught on the sausage curb there and gets beached a little as Verstappen spins it round. So that changes the entire top 10 from P4 downwards. It's still myself in the lead under this safety car. Leclerc second, Drugovich third, but now Bottas is P4, Norris P5, and then you can see on the mini-map there are a load of different other coloured dots to what we had before that entire ruckus. Well, we've got a restart to think about now, and I'm desperately trying to get some tyre temperatures into these intermediates because it's well documented in this game. The AI offer safety car restart on inters. They're so overpowered, in my opinion at least, because I just can't get any grip with these inters when you go racing. Again, a little bit of understeer into turn 1, but we've done well on the kind of exit of, the yellows onto green flag racing to push away from Leclerc and kind of get a 6/10 gap as we go into the end of Sector 1 into Sector 2, but I can feel all the time the understeer coming in the front end. The traction isn't quite there, and Leclerc is keeping up with this. He's brought the gap down now to about 5 to 4 tenths down this straight. The Mercedes is looking like a bit of a rocket ship, to be honest, in these conditions. I've run higher wings because I knew the rain was on the way for Saturday and Sunday, so maybe that compromise, it helped me out in qualifying as well over one lap. But at the moment, now because I'm not seeing the benefit of the higher downforce in the corners because of the tyres, it's a double whammy because I'm not good in the corners or good on the straights because the guys are catching me every time we get the power down. So at the moment, feeling the pressure a little bit from Leclerc behind us, only 3 tenths now behind us. Oh, we've dropped the throttle and the car spins and we keep it out the wall, skating across the grass, the runoff area, and coming back on circuit just in the nick of time to stay ahead of the likes of Pierre Gasly and Lando Norris, who are now having a scrap into turn 1. It's 3 wide between the Audi, McLaren and Red Bull. No, Lando Norris, sorry, has got away from that actually. He's up and away in P5. It's actually just Gasly and Albon that are having a fight, and behind them as well it's 2 by 2 because it's Sainz versus Sebastian Vettel. But this is the fight we're focusing on, that new orange and purple McLaren side by side with the Red Bull Ford these days in this series. Ford Performance, Red Bull Racing, as Albon is on the outside trying to get this position away from the McLaren, but Gasly's doing a great job to just steer the McLaren in the right way on the outside, finding the grip on the outside line. The Red Bull wobbles a little bit on the front end, and the Frenchman is going to actually finish off the re-overtake to get back into a nice P6 for the team. That'll be good points for them, of course, in a very slow season for both McLaren and Red Bull. Both of them will be desperate to get points today, as it's been a slow start for both of those, used to be top teams in this career mode, as we now watch Verstappen recovering in this race, overtaking Russell round the outside of the second last or third last corner. Really good move actually for Verstappen as he's up into P13, and Russell's struggling here as Piastri now, and the other McLaren looking to make a move. You got movements for Mick Schumacher, and Piastri's locked up and made a mistake there, and Schumacher's through now for P15, and now Schumacher is the one that will have a go at a limping George Russell, it would seem, as he goes round the outside to get up into P14. Meanwhile, fighting still going on between Vettel and, now it's Albon, because Sainz has actually passed both of those guys and will be trying to join his teammate up here in the top 5 maybe, as we're now here down in P4 trying to recover from that half spin and save. Bottas really struggling now in these conditions, whether it's tyre wear, a bit of car damage, I'm not sure, but visibly you can see his rear end is twitching away and the pace is not there for him. He's lost 3.2 seconds to Drugovich, and he's actually now slowing me up, ironically, and backing me into the Audi of Lando Norris. So we need to get past Bottas ASAP. We go for the switch from left to right, trying to get that traction, but the Haas is so quick in a straight line off that corner. I think showing that maybe this compromise of downforce that I put on the setup has maybe not worked out, because in real race conditions I'm now too slow in a straight line, but in the corners when the tyres are up to temperature I do have the advantage every single time in a brake zone and the traction. You'll see that right now as we go round the outside of Bottas as we enter Sector 2. And you can see I will out-traction him initially and get on the power earlier, but then he's going to pull back on us. Just watch on the right-hand side. He's pulling along, and now he's actually ahead of us. So the Repsol Haas, every car seems to have a straight line speed advantage over myself. Not too sure about Verstappen, but of course we'll never know now after that full spin for him. So not a great day in the office in the sprint race for both Ferraris, but to be fair, here in P3 in the sprint is now Norris gets up into P4. Bottas is definitely struggling with something. It's better than nothing. It's better than being out of the sprint race like Fernando Alonso. You can see on the bottom left there, P20 out of the race. That's where he'll start tomorrow's Grand Prix. So that's going to be a long day in the office for this Spaniard who leads the Drivers' Championship. But Bottas is falling away. Gasly now up into the top 5 for McLaren. But you can definitely tell these conditions are very tricky. You know, Verstappen spin, my half spin, you know, just the throttle. It invites you in to get a bit confident, and the second you're too confident and over cocky with it, it's going to bite back at you, and the damp conditions will get you. So you need to be careful, and even with 3 laps to go, we need to keep our wits about us as we now see Verstappen has overtaken Hulkenberg there, and there's still some insane battling going on behind with Russell trying to re-overtake Schumacher, who spins now. What did I say? What did I say? One moment of overconfidence and you're gone. Mick Schumacher, the 3rd casualty in this race to spin it in some form, and it follows Verstappen's full-on spin. That curb there on that right-hander must be deadly when he got on the power too early. It's taken 2 people out of the running here in this race. This time didn't cause a pile-up, but my word, that just proves my point and how difficult these conditions are. And to be fair, that shows how well of a good job Leclerc and Drugovich are doing to be now 6.1 seconds ahead of me in 3rd place. We can't catch them. They've got too much pace as we now watch Bottas. Oh, 3 wide as either side of him is Vettel and Albon, and Sebastian Vettel has gone for the double overtake, showing he's not lost any of his racecraft here at his old age now here in season 6 of this career mode. On the outside of Bottas. Oh no! Oh, it's the commentator's curse. Sebastian Vettel spun it now in the same place. Verstappen and Schumacher. There is something at that corner. Standing water, bit of tarmac, I don't know what, different tarmac or something or other. It's causing major issues in this race for so many of the drivers out there. 3 whole spins, that is, at that corner. And then you add on my spin in this section of the circuit. So yeah, very difficult race to manage here on the Saturday, but Leclerc is doing it very well, and so well in fact that he's going to soak up all the pressure from the circuit, the conditions, Felipe Drugovich, and come through the final corner now on lap 12 of the sprint to take victory here in the mini race on Saturday. Drugovich 2nd place in the fastest lap of the sprint, but we may just nick it away from them as we cross the line for 3rd place. It's not P1. It's not going to be pole position for tomorrow's Grand Prix. So we've got work to do. But, as I said, this whole race, because of the conditions, one little error is going to bite you back. And I'm not susceptible to a mistake. I am very much able to make one, and we did today, and we threw away P1, but in the end of it, it's still going to be a couple of points on Fernando Alonso, who scores 0, and, if you really think about it, we only lost 2 points. Yes, maybe 2 points could come back to bite us later in the season, but you got to just do what's ahead of you, and we tried to catch that slide, but it just was never going to get caught, because the rear end just went so quickly, leftwards, and shut my front end, so there was no counter steering that. We actually did very well to keep it out the wall, to be honest, in my opinion. So we go to tomorrow's full Grand Prix then. We're going to be on the 2nd row looking ahead at Drugovich and Leclerc, and I've only got my sights set on P1, a P1 that we should have got in this sprint race. So it's time for revenge in the full Grand Prix. Let's go to Sunday's grids.
Welcome from the beautiful Styrian Mountains for another chapter in the story of the Austrian Grand Prix. It's a short lap here in Spielberg with just 10 corners, 7 to the right and 3 to the left, making up the total distance of 2.6 miles. And expect to see a lot of cars running wide today, especially through the last corner, as the wet conditions make the cars skittish through the downhill sections. Off the back of a fantastic qualifying session, it's time to see how our starting grid looks like for today's race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday, and it's put him on pole. And Felipe Drugovich completes the front row. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have the owner-driver, Norris, Carlos Sainz and Albon, Bottas, Verstappen, Liam Lawson and George Russell, Perez, Ricciardo, Kevin Magnussen and Oscar Piastri, Vettel, Hülkenberg, Mick Schumacher and Pierre Gasly, Schwartzman, Fernando Alonso, Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon lines up at the back of the grid. And now it's time to head down to the track. Now I wonder, Anthony Davidson, might we be in for some early pit stops today from the midfield teams? Trying to put a bit of pressure on or disrupt things for the leaders?
If you're in the middle of the pack, you got your own race to run. I don't think they're going to be thinking about causing trouble up front. However, closer to the head of the pack, don't be surprised to see some split strategies. If you're running second and third, for example, bringing one car in for an undercut while leaving the other one out there longer can put a lot of pressure on the leader and maybe force them into an error.
Right, so we know what we have to do this race. Overtake these two cars, Drugovich and Leclerc, and then control the race from there and hopefully bring home a win. Easier said than done. There's 36 laps ahead of us, and it's even wetter than it was on Saturday, as we've all got the full wet tyres on, the blue walls, biggest tread, highest ride height, and well, it's going to be very difficult out there, and there are changeable conditions on the way, because I think this should go from full wets to inters to maybe even the dries by the end of the race. So there is certainly a very interesting race on the way for all of us here. Behind, Gasly unfortunately picks up a penalty, so the Audis are 4 and 5, so both of them will be looking to score big. But for us, it's just about getting this race start correct and seeing if we can overtake at least one of these guys through turn 1 and set up the other overtake maybe in the coming corners as we end sector 1. And there's a big opportunity to gain a load of points on the championship leader, Fernando Alonso, who starts this race in P20 after his DNF on Saturday. So here we go to 5 red lights, to a soaking Red Bull ring. 4 red lights are out and we're underway for this Austrian Grand Prix. And it's a very shaky initial start for us as we're drifting around with the rear end. But in third gear, we get the power down and somehow pull off the best start we've ever had in a long while, and it's in full wet conditions. We've gone from P3 to P1 by turn 1. We lead Leclerc, Lando Norris up to P3 as Drugovich tries to dive back down the inside of not only him but even Leclerc as well. Bit of a kamikaze one for the Brazilian, and behind Verstappen is also gained big time as he's up into P6 from I think it was P9 on the grid. But what an insane start for us, and it's really a aggressive opening lap for the Audi driver. Lando Norris up into second place now as he gets Leclerc on the inside. He's going to have to hold it round the outside, but it looks like the Audis are flying in these conditions. But let's look at that start then from on board of the Audi. You can see how much we struggled initially off the 5 red lights, but then into turn 1, as soon as we got up to third and fourth gear, Drugovich and Leclerc, I don't know if they got some late on wheel spin, but they were just so slow on the entry into turn 1, and then Drugovich made contact with Leclerc and almost spun him, you could kind of see into the first corner, and then he came back at both of them, and then that was just never going to work, but he slows up Leclerc. Lando overtakes him round the outside, and then we'll get a move on at chasing after the Mercedes. Leclerc pulls to the left, Lando keeps it to the right and goes for the dive bomb of a century, scares Leclerc off the apex, gets his elbows out, and all of a sudden the Audi is up into P2. What a cracking start from Lando Norris, cracking start from ourselves of course into turn 1, and it was also a cracking start for Max Verstappen, because he started in P9 it was, yeah, P9 in the other Ferrari, gets actually boxed out by the Red Bull, loses one position to Liam Lawson as Albon nearly squeezed him into the wall. At this point, he's actually still lost that position then, so the overtake must have come on the next corner, but there's a long run up the hill, visibility very poor with all the rain spraying off the rear tyres, but they're all going to bunch up on the inside, and look at this worldy overtake. 3 cars in one brake zone. Max Verstappen take a bow. Fantastic lap 1 from both of us Ferraris. Myself up into P1, Verstappen P6, and he's on towards now with some clean air, chasing after the top 5, tail-ended by Carlos Sainz, who's right up the gearbox of Drugovich, who is still pressurizing, looking to make the move on Leclerc. Meanwhile, Lando Norris is actually pulling away somewhat from Leclerc and looking to chase after ourselves. So, at the moment, fantastic start, but like I said, we've got a long race ahead of us now. 34 laps remaining to try and hold this, and changeable conditions, as Russell is in P8 now looking to recover, but he's going to get caught sleeping a little bit maybe by Sergio Perez in the Renault, who comes out of nowhere. Fighting going on between Piastri and Albon, and meanwhile Hülkenberg overtakes Ricciardo versus Aston Martin versus the Andretti, and Alonso's still down there. P17, he's made 3 positions, but it's slow progress in these conditions. It'll take him all race, I would suspect, to kind of get back into the points-paying positions, as Drugovich is now makes a move on Leclerc. Leclerc makes an error, and he's had a howler. Gone wide at turn 1, and he's now down to P4. So Drugovich has an easy time of it, actually pressurizing Leclerc, and Leclerc's the one now under all the pressure in the world from Verstappen and Carlos Sainz, the Audi and our teammate, side by side. Sainz keeps in P5, but they're squabbling for the chance to have a nip at the Mercedes heels. So very much so this season, every time Mercedes looks to try and kickstart their season, they're just showing this season there's some sort of gremlin, bit of bad luck in the car or whatever, or their drivers don't have that confidence after losing out to ourselves, of course, in the Constructors' Championship. Whatever the case, the Mercedes cars are not here to stay at the sharp end, as Leclerc goes further down the order, is now very much feeling the pressure from Sainz right now, but I'm feeling the pressure from that man behind us, Lando Norris. Myself and him 1.2 seconds ahead of the rest, 1.4 seconds ahead of the rest. So we're in a world of our own right now. Drugovich sets the fast lap of the Grand Prix though now as we go on to the end of lap 5, but we're going to take it back from him and go fastest of all. So initially I thought, oh dear, is everyone going to start going quicker than me? But we found our feet a little bit, got a rhythm, got a groove going on, and we're now also setting our own purple sectors. But Norris takes that turn 1 very aggressively, really takes a lot of curb on the inside and closes up. He's gaining, no DRS, but just pure slipstream, and that Audi's definitely a little bit quicker than us in a straight line, but we go defensive to the inside. So looking at the time gaps, it seems like in these conditions at least, it may just be a 1v1 race here today for the race lead. Myself in the Ferrari versus Lando Norris's Audi car. Drugovich keeping Leclerc at bay. But we're very much not keeping the Audi at bay. He's all over the back of us. He's got the better exit now to send one down the inside.
Don't panic just yet, but we see a problem at our end.
No. Do not tell me that, engineer. Do not tell me that. I don't want any slow button on whatsoever. We've just about held on to first place. Behind now, everyone's bunching up. Drugovich has been caught up in it, and he's going to the pits, and Leclerc's broken his front wing on the back of Felipe Drugovich. There's chaos behind, virtual safety car, but there's going to be chaos in our cockpit because it's an engine failure. From first place, we did so bloody well on the first lap to get into this position, and our Ferrari engine, our Ferrari car has failed us for the second time in 3 races this season, and we end looking at the wall on the runoff. Lando Norris takes on a 1-2 for Audi then, as it's Norris from Carlos Sainz, because Leclerc had no front wing. Drugovich just pit for damage, so it was all there. It was going to be a bit of a chaotic race, I think, behind us, and it was all going off, and I was set for a battle all race long with Lando Norris for first place, but instead I am walking to the back of the Ferrari garage for the 3rd time in a row. Oh, mamma mia.
And with that, as we wrap up yet another incredible Grand Prix weekend. So, Anthony, what made the difference out there today?
Rain always has the potential to liven up a race and mix up the order, and they've taken full advantage of that to claim the victory today. It's always a bit of a lottery when the conditions are like this, but they've managed to stay on circuit and have come out on top.
The faces on our top three look so incredibly happy as they make their way up to the podium. A much-deserved victory and a brilliant performance from them all.
And for the second time this season, what is going on? This is just a bit weird. Both times I've had a DNF from an engine failure. Verstappen, my teammate in the other Ferrari, has had no issues and he's gone on to win the race. That is weird. He was in third place, to be fair, actually, after my DNF, because it was Lando from Sainz to Verstappen, because Leclerc and Drugovich were taken out of the racing order. So I can see maybe how Verstappen was able to get into first place. Surely he, built confidence from that opening. And to be fair, this time round, unlike Miami, Verstappen, you can say, did have some great pace in these conditions with that triple overtake he made. So fair play. I can actually believe a Verstappen win here at Austria more than the win he got at Miami. But it's just funny, It's funny how my engine goes pop, and that's the race. Those are the two races where Verstappen wins. Not saying anything, but, we left our own team, AAR Racer, because of the internal politics and power struggles. We've maybe stepped into the lion's den. And the lion being Verstappen for the lion on his helmet, maybe, as he gets 2 wins this season whilst I DNF. I'm just putting some facts out. I'm not saying anything about what those facts mean. But so Verstappen wins it from Drugovich to Norris on the podium. Bottas, Russell, Sainz. Fernando Alonso did get 1 point in that race. He recovered to get 1 point. So it means we sit in P5 now in the championship. 34 points back from Fernando Alonso. 15 points between him and Drugovich, and Verstappen now all of a sudden is in the championship talk frame. As you'd expect, it was a slow start for Verstappen, but I was expecting him at some point to get involved in the championship fight. It would be weird for a driver of his caliber to not, but to be fair, in this series, he's not had a great time of it ever since he won that second championship of his in Season 1. But in Season 6, 5 seasons later, he's now back in the frame for a championship, maybe 18 points off Fernando Alonso. And we're down in P5 asking where it's all going wrong. And next episode really does have to be a bounce back, because all of a sudden we've now had 3 races in a row where we've scored no points, 2 of them out of our hands completely with the engine failures. Those are decided by the game before you even load into the race weekend. And then, of course, Monaco was just a really unfortunate incident, one that I think was Fernando Alonso's fault. So it's just a string of horrid luck. And, if anything, you can say we're getting the full fat Ferrari experience here in this season so far. And with all of that, we actually lead the constructors ahead of Aston and AAR Racing. So bittersweet kind of ending, because it's great news for Ferrari as a team. We lead the constructors. Verstappen got a win, but for me individually, this is not where we want to be. And we're questioning already, maybe, was this the right move to Ferrari to try and go for another championship? Was the challenge of being at Ferrari worth it? Was it worth it? Well, at the moment, I have enjoyed driving for the Scuderia, but last 3 races have not been great for us. Guys, if you have enjoyed the episode nonetheless, because there was some great action, the sprint to be fair, and the start of that race was, as I said, the best start we've actually ever had in this career mode. So really bittersweet episode to us in terms of the action. But if you have enjoyed it, hit the like button. Let me know what you thought in the comments below. If you're around here, then do get subscribed for weekly Formula 1 content. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.